Did you know that even legends can't escape the weight of time? Robert Plant, the golden god of Led Zeppelin, once stood at the top of the music world. His voice an untamed force, his presence magnetic, and his songs the soundtrack of generations. But at 77, the heartbreaking truth is that Plant faces struggles and losses that fame, fortune, and talent could never shield him from. The man once worshipped by millions now carries scars of tragedy, loneliness, and the cruel passage of time. Stay with us until the end, because the story of Robert Plant's journey from rock immortality to heartbreaking reality will leave you in tears. Robert Plant's story began in West Bromwich, England, where his fascination with blues and folk music shaped his earliest passions. By the late 1960s, fate brought him together with guitarist Jimmy Page, bassist John Paul Jones, and drummer John Bonham. Together, they formed Led Zeppelin, a band that would change the face of rock forever. Plant's powerful, soaring vocals and untamed energy on stage earned him the nickname, the Golden God, a title that followed him for decades. Fans saw him not as a mere performer, but as a living symbol of freedom, rebellion, and raw artistry. Yet behind the glory was a relentless lifestyle of touring, excess, and pressure. Zeppelin's success was staggering, but it also came at a cost. Plant often pushed his voice to extremes, battling exhaustion and strain in order to deliver the performances fans demanded. Despite the fame, Plant's personal life was fragile. He and his wife Maureen struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy for their children amid the chaos of superstardom. It was during these years that Plant learned how fleeting happiness could be, a lesson that would haunt him as the tragedies of his life unfolded. In 1977, Robert Plant endured one of the most devastating blows any parent could face: the death of his 5-year-old son, Carrick, from a sudden stomach infection. At the height of Led Zeppelin's fame, while millions worshipped his voice and image, Plant was crushed by a grief so deep it nearly destroyed him. He later admitted that he questioned everything: his career, his faith, and even his will to continue. For a man idolized as untouchable, this tragedy revealed a vulnerability that fans never saw on stage. The loss of Carrick changed Plant forever. He pulled away from the excesses of the rock world, distancing himself emotionally from the band that had once defined him. Songs like All My Love, written in memory of his son, gave fans a glimpse into his pain. While audiences heard beauty in his voice, Plant was pouring his broken heart into the music, trying desperately to make sense of the senseless. It was the first of many heartbreaks that would redefine not just his career, but his very identity as a man. By 1980, Plant faced another tragedy: the sudden death of drummer John Bonham. Bonham was more than just a bandmate. He was Plant's closest friend and confidant in Zeppelin. His death at just 32 years old was the final blow to a group already weighed down by personal loss and inner turmoil. For Plant, Bonham's absence was unbearable. "There was no point carrying on," Plant would later say. "It was like losing a brother." With Bonham gone, Led Zeppelin officially disbanded, closing the door on one of the most legendary chapters in rock history. The end of Zeppelin left Plant adrift. For the first time in over a decade, he was without the band that had defined him, the family that had held him together. The tragedy of losing Bonham wasn't just about music, it was about losing the foundation of his youth, his identity, and his sense of belonging. As the world mourned the end of Zeppelin, Plant quietly began the painful process of rebuilding his life, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. Plant's solo career began in the early 1980s, but it was not an easy road. Fans expected the same thunder and fire that Zeppelin delivered, yet Plant was searching for something different. He experimented with new wave, pop, and world music, refusing to live in Zeppelin's shadow. While some praised his boldness, others criticized him for abandoning the sound that made him famous. Plant admitted that he often felt lost, caught between pleasing fans and staying true to himself. Financial pressures and constant comparisons to his past made the journey even harder. Plant's albums sold well, but never reached the towering heights of Zeppelin's glory. He struggled with his voice, which had changed after years of straying, and with his image, which no longer matched the untouchable god fans remembered. These struggles weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. Plant began to realize that his past would forever define him, no matter how far he tried to escape it. Even as Plant carved out a respectable solo career, the world refused to let Zeppelin go. Reunion offers came with astronomical sums of money, but Plant resisted, insisting that the band ended with Bonham. His refusal often left fans frustrated, but for Plant, it was a matter of integrity. He couldn't recreate the magic of Zeppelin without the people who made it possible. This stubborn loyalty came at a cost, as Plant was sometimes criticized for denying fans the closure they craved. Despite his resolve, Plant could never truly escape Zeppelin's shadow. Every interview, every performance, every public appearance was haunted by the ghost of his past. He was constantly reminded of the tragedies, the death of his son, the loss of Bonham, the weight of being part of a band that ended too soon. For Plant, the shadow of Zeppelin was both a blessing and a curse. It gave him immortality, but it also trapped him in a life defined by sorrow and loss. Plant's personal life was just as turbulent as his career. His marriage to Maureen ended in the early 1980s, strained by grief and the chaos of fame. While he later found companionship in other relationships, including a long-term romance with singer Patty Griffin, Plant never seemed to find lasting peace and love. He often spoke about loneliness, admitting that the life of a rock star left deep scars that intimacy couldn't always heal. Even his romances were shadowed by tragedy. His relationship with Griffin ended in 2013, leaving him once again adrift. At 77, Plant has admitted that while he still craves connection, he has accepted a quieter, more solitary life. The man who once sang of love, passion, and desire to roaring stadiums now spends many of his days in reflective solitude, his heart carrying the weight of decades of heartbreak. One of the greatest tragedies of Robert Plant's life has been the slow erosion of his voice. Once the most powerful and iconic sound in rock, his high, wailing screams are now a memory. Plant himself has admitted that his voice changed dramatically with age, forcing him to adapt and reinvent his style. For fans, it is bittersweet to see their idol perform, still captivating, still magnetic, but undeniably different. Plant has chosen to embrace the change, turning toward folk, Americana, and blues in recent years. Yet the decline of his voice remains a painful reminder of time's cruelty. For a man whose very identity was built on the power of his singing, losing that gift piece by piece is a tragedy that no amount of wisdom or acceptance can erase. Despite all the heartbreak, Plant has found solace in faith, family, and simple living. He remains close to his children, including his daughter Carmen and his son Logan. His grandchildren bring him joy, offering a kind of peace that fame never could. Plant has also spoken about his belief in the spiritual power of music, how it connects him to something greater than himself, even as his body and voice decline. Still, Plant admits that loss never leaves him. The death of Carrick continues to haunt him, even decades later. In interviews, his voice softens when speaking of his son, as if the wound is still fresh. This balance, between joy in the present and sorrow from the past, defines Plant's later years. It is a reminder that no matter how much we achieve, we all carry pain that time cannot heal. As of 2025, Robert Plant lives a quieter life in England, far removed from the chaos of stadium tours and rock and roll debauchery. He occasionally performs, often with his longtime collaborator Alison Krauss, focusing on intimate shows rather than massive arenas. Fans who see him now remark on how fragile he looks compared to the roaring lion of the 1970s, yet they also note the deep wisdom in his presence. Plant may not move like he once did, but he still captivates with every word, every note, every story. Plant spends much of his time reflecting, gardening, and walking through the countryside. He remains passionate about music, but in a quieter, gentler way. For fans who remember the wild god of Zeppelin, this transformation is both heartbreaking and inspiring. It is the story of a man who lived at the peak of excess, only to find peace in humility. Robert Plant's tragedy is not just in the losses he has faced, but in the reminder that even gods must fall. He has buried his son, his best friend, and countless dreams. He has seen his voice fade, his body slow, and his life narrow to quieter days. Yet, within this tragedy lies the heart of his legacy. Plant's story is not one of invincibility, but of survival. He has endured the unimaginable, and still he sings. At 77, Robert Plant's life is a heartbreaking reminder that time spares no one. But it is also a lesson in resilience. His music continues to inspire, his presence still commands respect, and his legacy remains untouchable. The Golden God may have aged, but his story proves that true greatness lies not in avoiding tragedy, but in finding the strength to live through it.